Hello ladies and gents, I'm the Beanie 101 and I'm here with another Mass Effect Andromeda Multiplayer class build video. Today we're going to be looking at the common class of the Human Engineer, so it's a class that every single one of you is going to have access to right from the get-go, and this class is a pretty decent support class. It takes a while to get going, you've got to be really careful in terms of how you plan out your skills, but it can really shine in the later levels once you've ranked up quite a few of your skills. This build in particular is focused on the cryo beam, so you're going to be firing out beams of ice and causing devastation all the way over the battlefield. So let's get to it. The cryo beam is a continuous stream of ice. You can actually fire it out of your hands for quite a while, maybe 5 or 6 seconds or so, and you can paint loads of enemies with this ice, and every enemy that you paint, it does a damage over time effect, 135 damage per second. It also provides an additional defensive debuff to armored enemies, so you pretty much negate their armor completely, which is great. You really need to focus on those yellow barred enemies. And it's got not too bad a recharge time. 15 seconds is pretty decent, especially when you up your recharge speed on a couple of occasions through this build. So rank 2 is recharge speed, no problems there. Rank 20 is damage. The first choice that you have is at rank 4, where you go for either damage or recharge speed. I like to have loads of uptime on my cryo beam, so I go for the plus 25% recharge speed, no problem whatsoever. Rank 5, you've got a choice between Brittle Freeze, which provides additional debuffs against armored enemies, or Radius, which widens the surface area that the cryo beam can hit. I like Radius just because you can capture several enemies. The range on cryo beam in general is pretty large, so when you increase the radius as well, you can really spin around and create a lot of havoc with it. Brittle Freeze is good against armored enemies, but in my eyes you just don't have enough armored enemies to really make it too worthwhile. And rank 6 is where the skill really starts to shine. Now both of these skills at rank 6 do have their benefit. So Snap Freeze means that you do more shatter damage when an enemy dies under this effect, more shatter force, and more importantly more shatter radius, plus 150 frozen shatter radius. So the idea behind the Snap Freeze is that once an enemy dies under your cryo beam, it's going to let out pretty much an ice explosion, and that ice is then going to spread against all other nearby foes, and they're going to be chilled and they're going to suffer from the damage over time effect and the priming as well. I, however, really like Cryo Trap. The reason why I like Cryo Trap is because it provides a much greater sense of crowd control. You can paint your ice over walls, over floors, around doorways, and if you're trying to hold a position on particular missions, or if you just want to make sure that enemies aren't encroaching upon you, you can paint enemies but also paint the ground in front of you, and anybody that touches that cryo trap is going to be chilled. It primes them all, and when we get down into some of our passives, you will see why the cryo trap is really good. So you're really going for the bottom recharge speed, radius and cryo trap options for the cryo beam. Then I'm going to move down to the passives. The reason why I move down to the passives is these are the skills that are really going to help you do a tremendous amount of work with your cryo beam. Starting with support systems, this is generally going to give you a little bit more survivability. So you've got extra health, and shields and regeneration. Rank 2 you also have more health and shields, and your tech constructs, which in this case is your turret, is going to have slightly more health. Rank 3 is melee, absolutely fine, and then rank 4 you've got choices. Plus 30 to all power effect durations, or plus 25% tech radius and 25 area of effect radiuses for your tech construct. Because we've gone for radius on our cryo beam, this plus 25% radius increases that even more, so your cryo beam, your cryo traps can cover even more area, which I like. Tech duration could be okay. I just like the radius though. I like to be able to cover as much ground as possible with my cryo beam. Rank 5 is not really much of a choice. You have to go for advanced construction. That gives you more shields and more health, and actually it gives your turret more health as well, which is really quite useful for the survivability, especially if you're playing bronze and silver missions. Less so on gold. Enemies tend to be a little more aggressive on gold, and your constructs, your turret doesn't last quite so long, but you're really wanting the health and shields there to increase your survivability. Tactical revive, it does provide you with a lot of damage resistance when you're trying to revive a fallen comrade. 120 during revive and 120 after revive means that you're going to be taking less than half damage, which is a really strong buff. But I think that it's really situational. You're only going to get this for 5 seconds after you revive an enemy, or whilst you're reviving an enemy. I don't think you're going to get anywhere near enough usage out of this to make it worthwhile picking, unless you're dying a lot on gold or platinum missions when they come along. So advanced constructs all the way. But rank 6 is what I really want to talk about. You got shield reset, which means that using a power will automatically start recharging your shields. It's every 10 seconds, so the uptime on that is pretty good. That does help your survivability a lot as well. However, tech sabotage is where it is at. Hitting enemies with powers causes them to temporarily deal less damage. So it means that they are going to be doing 30% less damage to you for a duration of 8 seconds. 30% less damage is quite a lot, and if you pair that with cryo beam, you can paint stuff, you can chill stuff with your ice, and pretty much anything hitting that is going to be doing 30% less damage to yourself and to all of your allies as well. So tech sabotage is very strong. Moving on to offensive tech, this is another area where you can really dial up the damage. Rank 1, 2 and 3 are straightforward, plus 10 power damage, plus 8 weapon damage, and plus 15 tech construct damage. So you can see, for both of these passive trees, you can take a lot of the skills here, and your assault turret is going to be doing more damage, which is pretty good. Rank 4, you've got choices. You've got plus 10 power damage or plus 20 to all power effect durations. I like this mainly because it means that my ice lasts a little bit longer. Combo detonation damage and combo detonation radius plus 30% to both is quite good. It would be better if combos did more damage in general. At the moment, the damage of combos is not great, and I'm really using cryo trap not necessarily to prime things for combos, but to apply my debuffs and make sure that we can shoot enemies. So if you see an engineer on your team who's flying around with cryo beam, then don't start comboing off the frozen enemies. Instead, use your guns, shoot things. You're going to be doing more damage quicker. At rank 5, you've got anti-shield or anti-armor. I take anti-shield just because our overload really doesn't strip shields as much as I would like. And anti-armor, you're already getting a lot of debuffs to armored enemies. Plus, I think you generally come across more shielded enemies throughout the game anyway. So anything that boosts shield damage, I tend to go for. And rank 6, you've got elemental tech or mass weapon reduction. Now, your mass weapon reduction, fine, you've got extra weight capacity for your weapons, but this sort of build is really about skills and applying debuffs as quickly as possible. So if you are going to be choosing a weapon for your engineer, what you want is a light, fast rate of fire weapon that can, with an ammo type, either incendiary ammo, cryo ammo, or disruptor ammo, can apply that elemental effect as quickly as possible. So you don't actually want heavy weapons for that. Instead, you definitely want to go for elemental tech, and that means that anything that inflicts a status effect on enemies means that they are going to take more damage from heat, cold, and electricity. So the debuff is 35%, and what it kind of means is that if people do want to use their skills, to target enemies that are already affected by your cold and by your cryo trap, then they are going to be doing more damage. But equally, you need to have a gun really that has an ammo type on it. So I usually run around, I think the strongest is generally considered to be disruptor ammo, especially as it does additional damage to shields. Plus, if you do combo off disruptor ammo, it stuns enemies, so it's good for crowd control as well. So elemental tech is pretty strong, and once you get to rank 6 of offensive tech and support systems, and you have the elemental tech and you have the tech sabotage, your cryo beam is going to be doing plenty of work. The gameplay style is definitely painting things with your beam, and the uptime on it is pretty decent, so you're going to be able to spray things with enormous regularity. I tend not to put any skill points in my assault turret, just because I don't think the damage that it does is great. It's okay for something to distract enemies, absolutely. If you see a boss coming in and you're under fire, then chuck your turret out, and it does, you know, it throws out a little bit of damage, it helps you out here and there, but it's nothing really to write home about. The important thing about this particular build is you want a way of stripping shields very, very quickly, because shields are the one thing that is not going to be affected by your cryo beam. So you're not going to be able to apply any of your debuffs until you strip the shields completely. So overload is definitely the way to go. It's also the reason why we've taken anti-shield skills here in offensive tech, and we're going for damage in some radius effects rather than anything else in our passives as well. So for overload, you can charge it to chain to a couple of additional enemies, or you can tap it to use it as a detonator. I usually try to charge it if I can. Recharge speed, super important. Damage is great. Rank 4, you've got a choice of more damage or recharge speed. I like recharge speed just because I want to use my powers as much as possible. I always want the opportunity to use a power if I'm in a sticky situation, and for that reason I always generally prefer recharge speed over power damage. At rank 5, you've got charged overload, which means that you can chain it to an additional enemy. Yeah, fine, but 3 is already quite a lot. And anti-shield gives you more damage versus shields. So I'm definitely taking the plus 50% damage to shields. That means that you can strip those shields down so much quicker. And rank 6 also becomes an easy decision. Maximum charge means that you do additional damage to chained enemies, which is, yeah, fine, but you're not really using overload for damage. You're using overload for a detonator when you want to detonate stuff, but you're definitely using it for stripping shields. So what you want to go for is EMP at rank 6, and that does an additional 50% damage to shields and 15% damage to synthetics. So if you're fighting remnants, yep, it's going to do extra work for you against the remnant. And that is the build. You're going to be using overload for shields and getting rid of the shields, and otherwise you're going to be using cryo beam to either hit targets directly or to paint the ground and paint the walls around you to apply that debuff that means that the rest of your team and you can go to work. And what I would recommend for weapons, at the moment I've got a couple of fast firing weapons. The charger at rank 10 is pretty good. It's a common weapon, so everybody is going to have access to the charger, and I would most certainly consider applying an ammo type. My preference is disruptor ammo, generally speaking, because it also does extra bonus to shields, which means you're going to be stripping them quicker. However, cryo is fine, and it also applies that chill effect, and incendiary as well. You know what? It doesn't matter what ammo type that you apply. If you're applying an ammo type, the debuff that you're going to be getting from elemental tech is going to be applying. You're going to be doing 35% extra damage, which is fantastic. So what do you think of the build? Would you build this engineer in any other way? Do you focus on the assault turret rather than for Cryo beam? Let me know in the comments below. And if you found this video useful, don't forget to hit that like button. It lets you know that you want to see more of this type of stuff on my channel. But I've been the Beanie 101. Thank you ever so much for watching, and I'll catch you again in the next video.